Hi everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today my neighbor and I, we're going to do his Honda CRF 300L front forks. We're going to be installing the Rally Raid cartridge pack, level 1. And the springs are set up for his weight. So go online, they have a super website and they explain on what spring force you should be picking on basically your weight and how much sag you're looking for on the bike. So stay tuned and we'll get back into the logistics of it. A small info video. Anybody outside there want to do their upgrades to Rally Raid shock, it seems to be an amazing system and it's not too complicated. Maybe it takes about 3 hours total to do the job, from taking the shocks off to assembling everything with the oil and readjusting. So what we're going to do here is install the level 1 Rally Raid kit, which comes basically with 2 springs, level 1, depending on what force you want on weight settings. So that's very important on their website to choose what you would like. It comes with all the keys to assemble. It comes with a jig and a drill bit to drill out the C-clamp that is in the OEM shock that you can't get at. And it also comes extra with the seal replacement tool if you want to replace your seals at the same time. And those are extra as well. My neighbor and I, we thought the seals came with the kit, but once we got the kit, we realized there's no seals in it. So for now, the Honda OEM seals seem to be okay. They're not leaking, but down the road, eventually you'll have to buy seals. So the first thing you want to do is get the bike up on a stand eventually, but the best thing to do would be break the axle shaft loose, since it's torqued on pretty tight from the dealer. And before you do that, you're going to loosen these two 10mm bolts. That allows access to take this off. You remove the front wheel. You remove the plastic guards with these 6mm Allen cap screws. After that, on this side of the bike, you're going to remove the brake caliper because it's attached to the lower section of the fork. From there, you're going to break loose the 10mm clamp screws on the lower triple tree. And then the last section to do would be breaking the 10mm bolts here at the top of the triple tree as well to remove the shock completely. Mark on the bike or make a note the height of the shock on your triple clamp, so when you install it, it's exactly back where it used to be. And if these are very super tight, which they're not supposed to be, your cap bolts on your shock, you could try and break them loose now, but unfortunately everything here is in the way, the handlebar. But when I did mine, these were really easy to take off. I used a big Westcott and just held the tube in my hand and they popped off right away. So what we're going to do is start disassembling this, and then once one of the shocks are out, we'll get back to you and show you how to change the cartridge in the brake caliper side first. So we've got one fork out on this side. And basically now what we're going to do is take off the brake caliper here from the other side. These are loose. We'll take the plastic shield out and then we'll drop the other fork from this side. And this is the first fork we're going to work on for now. So the only difference between my Honda and my friend's Honda, he has the ABS system on it. So you're going to have to remove the sensor pickup coil here with an 8mm and remove this little plastic clip here. Otherwise, the rest of the procedure is pretty straightforward. Triple clamps, caliper removed, and we already got this fork out from the triple clamp, so that will be ready to go. Get back to with the installation. So here we have the left shock, brake caliper side off, and just to show you how easy it is to compress this shock from factory with the pogo stick spring is, you know, I shouldn't be able to do this by hand here. I'm almost bottoming the shock out by pushing it myself. So we're going to do a test after we've done the cartridge change. And the first thing we got to do is remove the screw in here, snap it open, and try and unassemble it. After that, we're going to take the cap off, drain the oil, and then once the oil's all drained, we'll finish pulling the screw loose and remove the old interior cartridge and install the new cartridge. So once we're at that point, we'll get back. Okay, we've loosened the top cap, ready to go here. We've broken the Allen cap screw that holds the piston in. And that comes loose just like that. And we're going to dump 500 ml of oil out. And we're going to put 500 ml of oil back in it when we're done. So this whole rod assembly is attached on the bottom with the Allen head cap screw. And then we'll end up pulling this whole cartridge out completely. So once the oil finishes draining and I'm ready to remove and install the new cartridge assembly, I'll get back to you guys. So we've removed the old cartridge spring, and as you can see, the diameter is a lot smaller than the new one. And also, because you have preload adjustment here with the big nut, this would screw down and move this inside bushing here when the spring is set inside here to compress your spring to take up your preload settings. And then of course we also have the rebound adjustment for the valve on the bottom, which this one OEM had no rebound or anything on it. So the only thing we're going to keep is the screw, the Allen head cap screw, and the copper washer at the end. That's the only thing we reuse on this whole job on this cylinder here. Apart from that, everything gets assembled. We have to assemble the screw here, so give me a second to set up that, and we'll film that for you. Okay, now we're going to install the spring. First thing we got to do is remove the adjusting head. So we currently don't have a 17mm key, but we do have an adjustable wrench that fits perfectly. So you're going to hold it down on the collar nut inside, and then use your spanner to remove the top of the nut, just like that. And it's not on that tight. There we go. And be very careful with the adjusting pin, because this is for your dampening valve. Take off your small washers and put them here. Now we're going to take the longer spring and we're going to put it on the shaft. And we need to compress the spring so we could rethread back the collar nut. So we have a nice little tool that came with the rear shock they supply. It has a little 5mm round bit. And if you turn this around, you'll see there's a 5mm hole in the shaft that this fits in perfectly. And now all we have to do is turn the spring. And by turning the spring, we are compressing the spring to give us space up front here to allow us to retorque our retaining collar and give us room to put our Westcott or 17mm key, if we had it, to tighten that all together. So using your spanner, not the preload nut inside, but your spanner that comes with the kit, we're going to tighten that back up onto the shaft, nice and tight like that. And then we're going to go the opposite way to unloosen the spring, get it all set up. And there we have it. So now we have a new tube with your spring set for your installation. We're going to reuse the threaded hex Allen cap screw with the washer to retain this in the bottom of the fork, and then we're going to install fork oil next, so we'll go from there. So we're going to use the spanner here and we're going to tighten up the top collar. It should be just hand tight or snug. We don't need to torque this on because the O-ring at the top actually maintains the seal with the oil, and if you ever want to work on this, you don't have to torque the hell out of it. We still got to put the Allen head, there we go, nice and snug. And then at the other end, we're going to put in, you can see it down there, we got to tighten up the Allen head cap screw at the bottom onto the new piston. Now, since we don't have new seals, we're not changing the dust guard, and under the dust guard there's a retaining clip and a seal, and also the bushing. So this one we're not touching. On the other fork, we need to remove the dust shield and the seal to disassemble the tube completely so we could drill out the clip. We'll get back into that after. This is the only part we're actually keeping in the job on this particular fork, along with the tubes. The rest we get rid of. Right now we're preparing 500 milliliters of oil, of which we're going to pour into the hole. And to help fill the shock, it's a good idea, all you do is get two people. One guy pushes down as far as he can, and as you're filling, allow the shock to come up to bleed the oil into the shock, and hopefully we don't make too much of a mess. So to fill this, the good trick is if you push the fork down a little bit to create a vacuum eventually, and you start pouring into the funnel and slowly allow it to come up, it will draw the oil into the fork tube. And it's going to be a little slow process, but just constantly up and down, we'll be able to get the oil in. Drop now. Push it down again. Draw it up. Push it down. Draw it up. We see no more oil. Draw it up again. There you go. Push it down. Draw it up. It's a good workout. Yeah. Plus, at the same time, the oil's causing resistance. Yeah, so you have to pump that up. You'll have to pump that a couple of times. Yeah, it's okay. A little leakage here, a little leakage there. It's less oil than a lot when I did the job. Or maybe 150 ml to go. going down slowly. Too much now because we're pumping oil now. It's almost full. What's that? Give it another couple of pumps, Nick. Oh. Okay. All right, now we'll put the screw in. And that's snug as a bug. Now what you could do is you turn it upside back, the right side up, and give it a few bumps. And you're gonna see now that there's no way you'll be able to compress this spring like the OEM one. The OEM, we're almost bottoming out with our body weight, and here we could barely move it 3 inches with our body weight. So it's a far, far better.
Nice.
So one shock's done, one fork is done, and we'll install that, and then we'll get on to the next one. So we're on the compression side of the spring, fork, I should say. So you got to be careful when you're taking the cap off. There is a spring in here, so it is a little preloaded when you're removing the cap. You got to be careful when you're removing the cap. Make sure it's not pointed towards your face. Also, you should always technically have safety eyewear on, and just in case. It's a little easier to drain the oil too from this one, and fill it, because we just put it in from the cap. There is no end nut to remove on this unit. So we are going to remove the cap slowly.
It's gonna shoot oil all over the place now. We're gonna lower it maybe to.
It shouldn't shoot oil. There we go.
Nice.
Now we empty the oil here. Oops, actually.
Oh yeah, whatever.
Well, that was the spring.
Spray stuck.
See, look, it's black there. This is one, so you can see the black flowing in the oil. So this is one season, and the oil is already black with metal particles. One season. So it just goes to show you, on 4 months of riding, we should be changing your fork oil almost every year. This one has 400 ml of oil in it, not 5. And basically the clip that we got to remove is retaining the springs. Okay, so we've got all the oil drained out. It's quite black, and now we're going to remove the mounting head. 14mm bolt on the bottom, or nut, jam nut, And on the top of the head there, you're just going to break that loose and get rid of the top of that so we can take the cylinder apart.
It's not the right size. I don't know, it's not smaller maybe.
So right now what we have to do is, now that the nut's off the shaft, the tube is loose, we got to remove the dust seal, the oil seal, and the retaining clip. And we need to separate the outer tube from the inner tube. And all that's to get at the retaining clip that holds the spring in the lower section of the tube. And we're going to use a drill 1.5 millimeters that's supplied with the kit, and the jig they supply as well, so that way you... Okay, so first thing you're going to do is, with a small blade screwdriver, is just work your way around gently, prying gently, and remove the dust seal. Once you've got enough, you should be able to move it by hand. Now inside here, I don't know if you can see it, probably not, but down the shaft there's a small clip holding in your lip seal as well for the oil. You want to pry that out. You would happen to have a pick tool, do you?
Something like that? Yeah.
Small, like a needle, or almost like an ice pick, but smaller. The screwdriver's a bit... No, okay, I got it. Okay. So you want to remove the retaining clip. Once that's removed, use it like a hammer, and you're going to pull out your lip seal. So we've separated the two seals. We got the lip seal off, retaining ring. These we can leave in place. We don't have to worry about it. After that, we're going to have a jig. In here is your little retaining clip for the spring. So that jig that they supply in the Rally Raid kit drills out this perfectly, and we'll get that to that on that stage. Okay, we've got the fork disassembled, and we're going to drill out the little retaining clip. They supply you with a jig. So what we want to do is line up the little hole of the jig where one of the ends of the retaining clip are. So when you're drilling, at the same time, you're going to pop the pin out, and at the same time here, you're going to add a little downward force on the spring to alleviate any pressure when you drill here. So we're lined up, that's pushed down. And that should... Okay, with the clip removed, this spring pops up. You're able to take this dampening rod out, and then the washer, and then the original spring. Empty any oil that's in there that's not in there, so that's good. And then what we're going to do now is okay, so we've removed the inside. Basically, this is the original spacer at the bottom of the fork tube, and at the same time we're going to be adding a new spacer on top of it in the fork tube. So let's go ahead and put that in. From there, we're going to put the new spring in. The new spring is the longer of the two. The shorter of the two go in the left hand
Left side.
fork. So you can put it with the numbers up or numbers down. Your choice makes no difference. You got to take the thing apart to see the number anyway. So the new spring goes in this way. After that, you put in the washer that came with the kit for the spring. We're going to assemble the new unit. There we go. So before we do this, we got to put a few things in. So let's take back out the washer and the spring. The first thing we're going to do is put the bushing in. And in the bushing, my neighbor, he bought the seal installation tool, which is a good thing because you need to buy this tool unless you already have it to reinstall the bushing and the lip seal or oil seal. So with this in place, you're just going to hammer in the seal.
Should that be closed shut though? So it's a tighter diameter?
It is. So that's in place. It's bottom out all the way. We got a washer, and then we got the lip seal or oil seal. That's bottomed out. You can see the groove for the clip. So the next step is to replace the retaining clip. Normally you could just get it in by hand and then just use a screwdriver to push it down until it's locked into the groove. And then the last piece is by hand. Put in the dust guard. And there we go. So the dust guard's in, seals in, clips in, washers in. Then we go back and put in all our bits, our retaining bushings in the bottom. Clean them up. I did flush the bottom a little bit because on this side, because of the dampening, there was a fair amount of metal particles. So here we go again, the spring goes in. Don't forget the washer for the spring. Dampening rod. And then your retaining spring pliers. So you can push everything down and get that clip in. And that's it. And then, so with everything assembled, we're just going to pour in 400 ml right into the top of the tube. Oh, once it in the bucket in case we spill all over the place. A lot easier than the left fork going through the bottom hole that you got to pump and compress. Give more space, pump it a bit. There you have it, 400 mLs. with the spanner, do not use the preload adjustment key with the nut at the top to tighten up. Use the spanner that comes with it to do it. And of course we've got oil everywhere. And that shouldn't be torqued on. The O-ring makes the seal. This should be just snug and tight. And there we have it. Now what we like to do is just spray it up with a little bit of alcohol to take any lubrication, so that way we have no trouble with it spinning in the triple clamp. So we'll get back to the final assembly. So with both shocks done, what we've done here is we've tightened up the top triple clamp, 29 Newton meters on the torque wrench. That's taken care of. Plus, at the same time, I've put in, if you could see right here, there's bleed screws on the top of the shocks that need to be done every ride to purge the air out. So I've put this in a position where you could get at it with a Phillips screwdriver very easy on the trail to bleed out any air that's formed. I've left the lower triple trees loose because what we're going to do is when we put the axle with the wheel assembly back together, we're going to perform what they call the CPR function to make sure that the axle shaft and the lower forks are all aligned so you get a little less wobble. So what we're going to do is put everything back together. So the 10mm bolts are all, this is 20 Newton meters, the triple clamps are 29 Newton meters, and the axle shaft itself is 59 Newton meters, or 50 pounds-feet of torque. But the thing is I would tighten this up whatever tool you plan to use on the trail, because if you tighten this really torqued up at 59 Newton meters, you may not be able to get it off with your little Allen 14mm Allen key on the trail. So I recommend tighten your axle with the tool you plan to use on the trail, so when you have a flat you're able to get your axle out. So as we assemble this, we'll get back and finish up the rest of the setup. Right, so we've got the bike back assembled. We've put on the fork guard covers, upper triple clamps torqued down to 29 Newton meters. We got the axle bolt in, tightened up to hand tight so you can get it off on the trail. Brake calipers on. That's been torqued up to spec. That's taken care of. The speed sensors put in for the ABS brake system. All the brackets are on. So what we've done here is we've left the lower triple clamp slightly loose, snugged up but loose. And we have left the axle clamp bolts loose. So what we're going to do is perform, as they call it, CPR on the bike, just to make sure that all the fork with the wheel and the axle lines up so you have less road shimmy at highway speeds. So we're going to end up going to do that, and we'll get back to you right here. All right, so we're going to do CPR. So with everything still loose and the front brake on, Nick's going to basically try and compress the front springs as much as possible. That way, by doing it like 10 times, it lines up everything before we snug everything up. And after it's done, you don't want to really move the forks or the bike off center. You go in and tighten it up after all the work is done. That should be good, Nick. So now I'm going to come here and we're going to tighten up the lower triple tree equally. And we're going to come back here after. And check the torque spec at 29 Newton meters. And at the same time, we're going to come down here and tighten up the axle clamp now that we know that it's in position. So So let me just get the torque wrench set up. And so we got our torque wrench here set to 29 foot-pounds. 29 Newton meters right there. And you want to go equally on both sides. Don't torque one side down all the way. Go a quarter turn. That's taken care of. This we're gonna need, I think, an extension. Right, so you'll be able to get in here. I got the extension bar on. And you want to go quarter turn at a time. Clicked. Clicked. That's all torqued up. Down here you don't want to go that tight, but you do want to tighten it equally. Otherwise you'll never get this loose on the field. This should be done 20 Newton meters. So I'm just going to snug it up tight. That way equally we know we're good. So that's the Rally Raid suspension rebuild. Hopefully this helps you do your project in the future. There are some other videos that go into more detail, but a lot of this was just bolt on, bolt off work. It was mostly changing cartridges we wanted to show you today. And the next is to set your sag, and that you could do with the preload adjustment, and from there everything's good. All right guys, thanks for watching. Until the next time.